Hey, welcome. This is Marnie, and I'm here today with Misty Phillip of Texas. She is the coordinator of the Spark Pod Conference. Welcome to you, Misty.
Hey, how are you? I'm so glad to be here with you today.
I know, I'm excited, and I'm excited to help you promote this conference because this is actually for gals who want to start or are actually doing a podcast already, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And where'd you get the name Spark? I love it.
Yeah. So, it came out of prayer. So I was praying, I was working on my next book and it wasn't actually going very well. And my husband said, why are you diverting attention away from your podcast to write this book? And he goes, it's clearly not working. And he said, I think you need to reevaluate. And so I went to the Lord in prayer and I said, God, where does my gifting and my calling line up in this season? And he gave me he gave me, this you probably hear me better now. He gave me the conference. He gave me everything. And then every day as we planned the original conference, I would be like, okay, God, what are we going to do today? And he just really opened the doors of heaven. And we had the first inaugural Spark conference in February 2020, just a couple of weeks before the world shut down to the pandemic. And so people were left inspired to start a podcast. They were left, the people who already had podcasts had new relationships were formed, and the interviews and just were ignited their passion for their podcast. And so that's how it all started. And that's where the name came from, the Lord. Yeah.
Now looking back, you're like the divine inspiration of God, right? When everybody has to only get everything they get online.
That's right.
You've equipped all these gals to do this, and you're doing it again. And this one is online.
That's correct. Yeah. So we sold tickets at the original Spark event for next year, and we were planning to do it in February. But at this point, we don't know what February is going to be like. And I actually started to be a little discouraged in my own podcast journey. And I'm in some groups with some people, and they were feeling just the weightiness of the world. And I'm like, okay, if we keep our eyes on the world, it's going to be heavy. And God has given us clear assignments of what he wants us to do. And so we need to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and stay on mission. And so I want to encourage women to stand strong, and men both, to stand strong with what God has called you to do this year, and then give a fresh vision for 2021, because we all went into 2020 like 2020 vision. It's going to be
I know
things, and then God had a totally different plan. Right?
What a year! Well, real quick, I want you to take us through some of the things that you've learned, and we only have a couple minutes here today, but you guys can get way more at the sparkpodcon.com. So right now, I want you to tell us, what is the key to designing a popular podcast?
Yeah. So I'm going to say it's three things. One, you have to know your audience. You have to know your message, and you have to know your why. So it starts with a clear message, know who you're serving, and then knowing your why. In podcasting, there's something called pod fade, and that's when people just fizzle out. So if you don't have a strong why, if you don't know your purpose, then you will fizzle out. But when you have those three things, when you're on mission for God, you know who you're serving, you understand your why, that is the secret to creating a great podcast.
And that's what keeps you getting up every morning to do it as well, is because you're so on fire about your why, about what you're doing. And that's what attracts your listeners to you. So what is the number one mistake new podcasters make?
Yeah, it's fear. Fear holds them back from ever starting.
Right.
Yeah, because I think it's like the technology. And I know for me, I procrastinated for 2 years before I just really had a clear vision of what it was going to look like and how we would handle the technology. And it's really not that scary. It really isn't. You need a microphone, a way to record, and a message. And that's really what you need.
And just to release the rest to Jesus, because you're all going to start with like zero, or your mom listening, that's kind of where everybody starts. And then it grows from there. And so it's okay. And to just do some practice ones and get it under your belt, and then launch and go for it and let Jesus do what he's going to do. What's the secret to endearing yourself to your audience?
I think vulnerability. I think people want to see real.
So
They don't,
true.
especially in our Instagram world where we can, post whatever we can make this pretty picture of life, but that's not real life, and people want real. And so I think as a host, if we can be real, then we're going to connect with our audience. And I think that's going to make for a great show.
Huge. I also wanted to just ask you, because there's so many gals considering doing a summit now. And a lot of people are saying to me, oh, there are so many summits. Is there any space? Oh my goodness, you guys, there's so much space for this still. So don't throw that idea out the window when God puts it on your heart. There's a lot of space, but I want 3 tips from you for potential summit leaders. First, what's the most critical first steps? Where should they start?
It kind of goes back to the same thing I said about podcasting. You have to know your why. You need to start with prayer. You need to know who you're serving, and it has to be something that people want. What you need to understand the felt need behind what you're trying to do. Right. Yeah. And then you'll attract the right people because you'll know what their needs are.
Yeah, great. Excellent. And so how do you avoid the overwhelm, and how do you stay on track through the planning stages? Because there's a lot to be done when you're planning a summit.
Yeah. Organization, is the key there, and just staying organized, starting early so that you give yourself a lot of time, which I'm not following my advice because I only gave myself 6 weeks for this summit, but I was so busy with so many other things. And I knew that God wanted this, that I needed to do this now to encourage people to stand strong before next year. So I didn't follow my own rule, but I've already done it. And once you've done it,
I was going to say,
you have everything in place, and it's just a matter of sort of plugging in and playing there.
Honestly, if it's your first one, you really need 3 to 6 months. And so, but if you've done it before, you can pull them off even in a short period of time. And you actually have a lot of speakers. How many speakers did you go with on this one?
Yeah, I think we have 10 or 11 speakers. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the key to successful collaborations then in awesome summits?
Yeah, I think, I've got a lot of friends that I collaborate with, and it's developing those relationships so that kind of who does what, and you serve one another and you serve each other's audience. I think that's really the key. So when I decided to do this summit, I was able to reach out to several people that I already knew to say, hey, do you want to do a swap here? And so, yeah, I think that's the key, is developing relationships, and then once you have those relationships, then people want to help serve one another.
Absolutely. So do you have a final thought for gals who are considering either starting a podcast or a summit idea? What would you say to a woman who's just like, I think God's putting this on my heart. What should I think about? Like, do you have a favorite verse or something like that?
Yeah. So my favorite verse is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean on your own understanding, because that's what trips us up, right? In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. So if God has called you to do a summit, to start a podcast, don't let fear hold you back. Obey him and step out and trust him. And if he calls you, he will equip you. And
so great. Yes, absolutely. And I too would just add my heart to that. There is a huge fear factor anytime God's calling you to something new, something you haven't done before, or especially something that's out in the public. Like both a podcast and a summit are so public, and you can feel like if it doesn't go a certain way, I'm going to fail. And so how do you deal with, just very quickly, how do you deal with that, your expectation versus your actuality versus maybe what God has a different idea?
Yeah. So we just have to go forward. I've been reading Bob Goff's book on dreaming big, and he talks a lot about our ambitions in there. And you know what? Sometimes we do fail, but if we fail, we learn from it. And so we just have to be very open-handed with everything and just say, God, this is yours. You do with it what you want. You bring the people that you want to bring. You, have the listeners that you want to listen. And if we don't fixate on the numbers, if we just fixate on the Lord and what he wants for us, and then just be very open-handed, I think that we can be really surprised. When we partner with God in ministry, then it's not up to us. Then we trust him. So
yeah, audience of one, which is Jesus.
Right. That's right.
And then avatar communicating to the one who your who is, and communicate to her. And as you know, in doing this, we know that God is going to accomplish what is in his heart for whatever it is that he's calling us to do. Oh my goodness, Misty, I'm so proud of you. And I'm excited with you about your summit that's coming up. You guys want to be sure to go check this out now. SparkPodCon.com. And also, Misty's one of our speakers over at womenspeakers.com. So she's also available for your programs that are coming up. Thank you for joining us, Misty.
Thank you so much.
And thanks,
you.
and thanks, you guys, for being here. Have a wonderful day.